It's early season, my freezer is low, and just had some awesome success on a beautiful velvet 8-point buck in Kansas, and now it's time to use a last tag that I have in Kansas to go after a big old slick head and get some meat in my freezer. This season for the setup team powered by HuntStand has just kicked off with a bang. If you want to see the first episode, our own Josh Honeycutt got it done on an early season Kentucky buck that he has quite the history with. So if you want to see that, you can head on over our YouTube channel and check that out. But for this episode, we are going to be in Kansas with myself, and I just got it done on a beautiful velvet 8-point buck, my first out-of-state buck with my phase 4, and was able to get it done on night 1 of opener of archery in Kansas. So if you want to see that, that is in an all-new HuntStand original, which you can check out on our YouTube channel. But I've got one tag left in my pocket, and that is a doe tag. So if you draw Kansas and you get that buck tag, a lot of times you're going to get that doe tag. And I still had that burning a hole in my pocket after getting that buck. So running low on meat, and my Texas season hadn't kicked off yet. So I needed to fill the freezer, and we got permission from our buddy Cody to go out on this piece of property that he's got set up, and we got permission to go after a doe. And the reason we were going into this specific area is the amount of impact that we weren't going to have on the deer there. There were hardly no bucks showing up. We put a muddy matrix camera in there back in June or July, and we had nothing but doe after doe after doe coming in. So we really weren't worried that if we shot a doe and she went down into one of these big, steep, nasty drainages behind this area that we were set up in, that we weren't going to have a whole lot of impact on the area. And so we knew that we were going to be able to get in there and not have an effect on the deer. We were able to go in and create a hunt area early in the summer, and he was able to go in and mark up property boundaries, different stand setups, water locations, feed and bait locations, because in Kansas you can bait. And so we were able to go in there early on and see that before we even stepped foot on the property. So that was a real nice thing to have on our side with HuntStand before we even stepped foot out there and before going on this hunt. It's September 13th, and we're going in the afternoon to put a slick head down on the ground. The reason we were doing an afternoon hunt versus the morning after getting this buck that I did on opening afternoon, we didn't want to hunt in the mornings. And the reason why is all these pieces of property that Cody had, they're set up on bean fields, and these deer would just funnel out in these bean fields late in the evenings and pretty much spend the whole night out there. So our access trying to get in the mornings was going to be really sketchy, and more than likely we were going to blow out just about every area we went into. So that's why we chose to go in the afternoon. And not only that, we did have a front that blew in just before opening day that we had some rain, north winds, but on this day that wind was finally shifting from that north wind to south wind, which was going to be perfect for us. The great thing about this was with that southeast wind, it was going to be blowing 10-15 miles an hour, so it's not going to be that light and variable winds that are going to be pretty screwy and just kind of go all over the place and essentially probably alert the deer if you have that kind of wind. The drainages that were set up behind us, I mean, it couldn't have been better, because anything that did come from right behind us, if they came up that drainage, they were going to be right next to us in this big cedar tree that we were set up in. So our wind would just blow right over the top of them. Prepping for this whole entire hunt after we drew Kansas tag is we got some cell cams out here to our buddy Cody, who owns this property, and we got it set up on various locations. So like this spot, we've got a watering hole that he came and put in because it's been so dry. He's got a boss bug feeder here that's got protein and just kind of a mix of corn and other stuff in it that the deer are coming to and from, even though they do have beans. We're not worried about really disturbing this place because these deer are here. They're not going anywhere. So it's a low impact area and a great spot for us to come and help out with some population control and put a doe down on the ground tonight. For the timing of year that we were in, these deer were just pretty much focused on bed to food. bed to food. You know, it's preseason, early season. These deer don't even have the rut on their mind. A lot of bucks have just stripped velvet. There are a couple out there that still have them on, but you know, we went in about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the reason we did that, we would be able to get across these bean fields, skirt some tree edges that Cody had marked up, pretty much a path for us to go in. There would be least resistance, and we can use hillsides and the tree edges and the beans to essentially kind of cover us from any deer that might be on the tree edges per se, or down in the drainages still from seeing us. So access getting into this stand location, into the doe hole, was gonna be super easy. And it was gonna also be easy getting out at night unless we just got the fields filled up with a ton of does. Lo and behold, we got set up. It was a beautiful evening, stiff, you know, just steady wind in our face, southeast wind, and we knew it wasn't gonna change till way after dark, so we weren't really even worried about our scent that evening. Pretty quick right off the bat, we did have a fairly mature doe with a fawn come in.
That's one of the few times I'll let a doe walk as if she's got a fawn with her. Like to let them grow the next generation, so she got lucky tonight. She got herself a hall pass.
They eventually walked off, and sun starts to go back behind the trees, and we hadn't seen any deer yet, which was, at the time, wasn't sure what was going on, but it wasn't long before I looked straight up the road, following the tree edge in front of us. Here comes a deer. Now, me being in Texas, it's kind of a culture shock seeing these giant deer that Kansas have. I'm not used to seeing a deer over 200 pounds on the hoof. I mean, Texas, I can pick up a mature buck with its hind feet, set it in the back of the side-by-side, fairly simple. But when I killed that buck the other night, I mean, I was just thrown back at the size of these animals. And so when I first saw this deer come around the corner of the trees, the first thought that goes through my mind is like, man, there's a buck. Well, that's not what we're here for. And put the binos up, and sure enough, it was just a giant doe. Giant for me, at least. I mean, we're used to these tiny little mouse deer here in Texas. And so she came down the road and immediately went to water and didn't give her any time at all. She was stopped at 13 yards, drew back on the phase 4 and settled the pin right where I needed to, and I let her rip.
Finally had a shooter doe come in. Had that one mama doe with the fawn come in that they came back, and then finally up the road had a really good doe come down, and she came to get water and settled it right down. Looked like a good hard shot, so you can see the arrow right down there. We're gonna give her just a little bit. We'll get down out of the tree, go look for blood, hopefully. She's right down in there, but if we got a track, that's the whole reason why we're going in here tonight, is if we have to go look a little bit further down in there, we're not really gonna mess this place up. And I think I just heard her fall. She may have just gone down.
So as soon as I shot, doe ran right into the drainage. And I saw the hole that she went through, shooting the NAP kill zone. And so waited, got down out of the tree, went down and looked, didn't see any blood right away. So one of the things I like to do, that if I run into a situation like that, I like to very cautiously work my way to where I last saw that animal go. So the hole that she went through, I just worked my way to it, kept my eyes up, making sure I wasn't gonna see a deer bedded there still alive, or if they're dead, you know, there's no tracking required. So got to the tree edge, immediately it was just a stream of blood. Dead doe right there, man. And Cody's calling me right now.
Whew. Got ourselves some more. Golly, look at the blood trail here. Look at this, dude. Oh my god.
Pretty sure that's the biggest doe I've ever killed in my life. I've never seen a doe body that big. These deer here in Kansas are insane. Kansas has provided, hey, look at that, something with thorns here in Kansas. Feels like home. Man, tell you what, Kansas has been too dang good to me, and hopefully this Texas boy will be coming back. Recovered her, field dressed her real quick, and we were able to get the truck down in no time and back to camp and go home with an ice chest full of Kansas whitetail. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of The Setup, powered by HuntStand, and we'll see you on the next one.